Hi there, this is Bianca Lopes, and this is day 3 of No Identity Conference. And in the Be in the Know show, I have another amazing woman in identity that I met here during the conference. Leanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bianca.
Tell me about you. You have the coolest title, Head of Data at Hello Soda. How did you get into this business? And I know you just moved to the US, so tell me a little bit about who Leanne is.
Okay, so I am a whiskey drinking, golf semi-loving, ex-swing dancer with lots of interest in the tech community. That's me. I also just adopted a 3-legged dog. So yeah, that's literally the breed of the dog. No, I'm kidding. But so that's a little bit about me. In terms of my path into data, it's been a really interesting 10-year journey. I originally started out doing a master's in financial maths, which I guess was kind of a bit data science before data science was
before
there.
It was a cool buzzword, right?
Yeah.
I was starting the same stats,
Yep.
and people were like, oh no, that's just like numbers and Excel sheets, and now it's data.
Yep, and maths and stats and intersection between that, code programming and business. So that's kind of where I started things.
And what made you do that? Like, did you have a passion? Were you just like good at science and you're like, I don't know what to do? Because that's kind of what happened to me. My math teacher still doesn't believe that I'm in this business.
I'm allowed to be really frank and honest.
Of course, always.
The short answer is I kind of wanted to make money. The long answer is I was
amazing. That's how I became a banker. And then I realized I was like, no, that's not for me.
I genuinely know that's actually a joke and a lie. But no, I for me, I just have really enjoyed applied mathematics. That was always my kind of like core driver. And I really enjoy thinking about, okay, how do we generate great things doing a business? How do we think about problems like how do we bring ROI across all of the kind of parts of tech that we do? So that's where I got into financial maths. Was okay, maths is great, and my undergraduate was in maths and music. So
that is amazing.
So I'm a bit of a mixed bag of trades.
I love this because I'm the same. Like I love the arts, but I love Mathematica, and like math to me only made sense when it became about money and something applicable, and not about trigonometry. And then I was like, oh, this is what you abstract, and you can actually make decisions.
Yeah.
And data tells stories. So how did you transition from that into Hello Soda? Tell me about it, and what is it like? What does the head of data do?
Okay, so my background was in a traditional CRA, so I was building risk decision models, which was a great experience, and built my way up there. And then
did you find, because I have to ask this, like I talk to like CIOs all the time, and I have a bit of a problem with how most risk models are based today. They're based on linear math, and they're based on like usually parameter security and things like binary. It's either yes or no, and it's actually like a lot of degrees and shades of, I won't say gray. But
yeah, and it comes back to that personal data issue, right? So the problem is that it's heavily regulated. So how you have to prove every step of the journey. So it's easier to say if somebody is a yes or no outcome. And it's also easier just to say, okay, let's just whack a logistic regression on this because we can physically find out. Now, data science is moving at such a lightning speed that now we have great models that can figure out if we have a black box, can we actually understand the implications of what the decisions was going on in that deep learning algorithm. But at the same time, regulation doesn't want you to think about that, and they want it to be easy for the consumer. But actually, most of the time, the consumer doesn't care. And
they don't even know, right? Like we had this conversation yesterday. Like the literacy of the average person, like we don't wake up and go, "What is my data today, and what am I going to do with it?" So like the regulation needs to catch up. And needs to understand sort of, I think, the complexity in some of these things. So what are you doing today? And tell me about Hello Soda.
That's exactly how Hello Soda was born out of. That's frustration with the traditional static data that really wasn't giving any insights. So the CEO, James Blake, was at a conference one day talking to a gentleman was speaking about using natural language processing to understand the terrorism intent of users online. And they were like, oh, this is like a really great dynamic data set. And there's these new technologies and processes that mean that we can finally actually understand about the context of a person. So how do we actually know about them?
So it's all, like to me, data tells stories in the sense of it's context, it changes, it's about the variables you're collecting. And it's not a thing like KYC, which is like, I've done it and now I keep going back to it.
Yeah.
It's actually how I've progressed and how I build degrees of assurance that change based on the circumstances. So what is Hello Soda?
So we're a big data analytics business specializing in data solutions for ID verification and hyper-targeted marketing with a range, and particularly in the ID space, we kind of have an ID plus angle of what we do, which combines user consent-driven social data, document scanning and selfie recognition, along with utility bill. So we kind of bring together the pieces of the puzzle that you will plug us into a longer map in your decision engine. So we're trying to understand how can we capture more relevant information to that transient market that we have now.
So tell me, like, give me sort of help the person that's sitting there listening to be like, oh, that's how I would implement Hello Soda.
Absolutely. So if you're a payment services provider and your customers are submitting a different address from shipping to billing, and at that point you
Which
have
we always do. I just ship stuff to Vegas, and my billing address is my Canadian or my Brazilian or my Spanish card, and my shipping address happens to be Vegas, so the stuff can get to me here.
So hopefully a relevant use case.
Okay, kind of relevant. So what happens then?
So generally what will happen is that probably a fraud engine somewhere in the system right now will go, hey, we've never seen Bianca making a transaction
Ship it
from
to
Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah.
So what's going on? So this is where we will step in as it optional for the user to bring in, rather than having to wait a 72-hour process for that to be, by that point you don't want your Amazon Prime good anymore.
Yeah, or they deny it and say, no, we have to step up, here's an SMS code, here's whatever, and then my phone's on rooming, it's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we will step in and we're offering an online verification piece, maybe using the social step or using a document step, depending on what our client wants to do. But with the social step, what we can then understand is if the user's willing to consent that information, we can then triangulate the geotags of that user to say, hey, yeah, this looks like a real person. It looks like Bianca. It's a real enough profile, and also there's enough information there. So it's much more softer approach because we're not looking at situations which are like really highly regulated, where it's like it needs to be super, super robust. Which is like, hey, you want to get your Amazon Prime thing in the next hour, and there's a friction point there for you.
Yeah.
You don't have time to wait for.
Yeah, the client won't expect, and it shouldn't be like, I was having this conversation as well. Like, it shouldn't be a trade-off between security and convenience. It shouldn't be an or, it should be an and.
Yeah.
And that's what you're enabling to do.
Yeah, that's the idea, and hopefully we're still on us. We were founded in 2013,
Okay.
So we're maturing through that journey now. And so
I love that you're saying this. This is the hint. If you're ever talking, if you're a bank or any large organization, you're talking to people that tell you they have AI or data science, and their business started 2 weeks ago or 18 months, they're not, because you need large data sets. You need the 3 V's of data: variety, velocity, and volume, right? So this is music to my ears when you tell me you work at a startup and you've actually been at it since 2013.
Yeah, so and we had those frustrations in the early days, when you don't have a small, especially user consent-based data. So
Which wasn't a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that what's also great about the space that we work in is that there's lots of ways to now synthesize data. You see all the stuff with the image recognition, with the GANs, all of the beautiful supermodels because of the way that the data's been trained, which is ironic.
Which then doesn't work in any diverse populations. I've had some awkward situations with heads of innovation that happen to be from a different diverse background. It works on me, it doesn't work on them sometimes, and vice versa, which is kind of scary.
And that's what gets me really impassioned, is that we're in the same way in the identity space. We're at a crossroads of we know what the solution is, but we're not quite there yet. It's the same in the data space. There's all these frustrations. My big passion is about how do you actually put data science and machine learning into production. And it's something we've been doing since 2014, and I get very impassioned and excited about that.
Tell us why.
Because there's a difference between building the best kind of deep learning with TensorFlow and all of the things that you want to put in to do some great recognition, but then how do you actually lift that out and make it use case? So I very much am all about my team building very small prototypes and getting those into production to think about the longer route of the data model. So
I love her. This is music to my ears. Actually understanding that data is a story and is a progression, and you're actually going to learn and be able to fine tune your biases in your model if you do it that way.
Yeah, and there's so many parts of this like system that people don't think about, because there's the whole infrastructure and the logs of that model that's going on, not just from a testing point of perspective to say, hey, is this model performing in the way? Is it doing what it was actually supposed to do?
Is it answering the basic fundamental question or design? But most people don't do that, right?
Well, and that's just a very small part of the big problem that we have, because software engineering has these great pillars of principles because it's been around for 40 to 50 years in the way that we know it now. We have version control, we have taste-driven development, we have
but modeling languages, even like when you look at foam built by Google, has not been in the market for that long, and there's very few people that understand what the consequences of a model is when it breaks.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're coming to, is that the next big breach will actually be we didn't version control our data or our models in the correct way, and a large business
Stay in the know is the next big breach by Leanne. Like, she's just a prediction at this point.
We're quoting it.
We're quoting it. Yeah, I'm holding you responsible because this is your first time in know, and you're coming back next year.
If it happens, though, I'm not taking any responsibility. I do worry about the predictive analyst or the junior data scientist who's given a freedom to kind of go away and build something that they're like, oh, look at this model that was really cool, and somebody signed off somewhere down a pipeline that they didn't quite understand what this thing was doing. That's why the system was so heavily regulated. That's why we have to use logistic regression and linear models, because it was easy to sign off on and people could understand it. Now we're in
and
this
there was a backup plan of being like, oh, here, I said I can prove that it was no, it wasn't Bianca, or it was whatever.
Yeah, and now we're in this free-for-all where as we enable these solutions to put data models in production, there's this kind of downside risk.
Ethical and sort of logistical reason of like, what is the consequence?
Absolutely.
And and math is an abstraction game, but it's a tough one to play. What is it like to being a chick in this business?
Oh, good fun. I really like it. Mainly because I don't know. I don't think for me, I think about my gender when I'm being in the business so much.
Same. I just think of me as a human being.
Yeah. So, but the cool thing is that I get the luxury of getting to network and talk to awesome other women. So I do play on that quite a lot. It's just like, oh, you're a woman, I should go find you at a conference and have a chat.
Yeah, it's almost like a safety zone. Here, collect, come. And I'm finding that shift and that change instead of segregating, sort of bringing chicks together. So one of my biggest passions in talking about things other than tech, you like dance, music, math. So we're aligned there. I like fashion, and so do you. In this episode of Be in the Know, we're going to talk about women and fashion in conferences.
In high school, I did textiles, so I actually used to make clothes, and so in my
she's probably the most interesting person I've interviewed.
Working for a really small tech business, what you start to realize is it's really cool going to a techie conference because you start to see how everybody else is wearing. And I think the thing for me is that some of the smartest attire that I see is always wearing just a really nice pair of jeans with a really good shirt.
If you want to know more about fashion and chicks, be in the know, and we'll see you next time.